Assalamu alaikum everyone. Mera naam hai Aisha Nawab and I'm a trainer and consultant with Carnelian. And today I have with me one of my personal favorites from corporate Pakistan and the HR fraternity in Pakistan. She's been associated with some of the biggest names that we have, such as ICI and Unilever. She has a career that has spanned over 20 years now. And I'd like to welcome all of you with me on this conversation with Fatma Zubairi. Fatma, how are you?
Very well, Aisha. How are you doing?
I'm great, Alhamdulillah. I'm so glad that I finally managed to catch you. I know that you have a super
Yes,
busy schedule all the time, and I just want to let you
not
know
at
that
all.
we have a lot that we need to kind of capture in these next couple of minutes. So I'll try and like kind of squeeze everything in and jump right into the interview. So one of the first things that I
Sure.
want to ask you, that back in 2014, I remember we were doing this extensive launch when you were at ICI with respect to the success factors, and there was a whole competency framework that we were working on. And I remember that you were very, very particular about the performance dialogues and how performance dialogues are very important and all of that. And I just feel like 2020 in general has just been a very difficult year for business leaders and for their associates. So my question to you would be, what would your advice be to these business leaders who need to engage in these difficult conversations on a regular basis? So your advice, your tips, your tricks, anything that would enable them to become more effective at having these crucial conversations.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I've always been a proponent of the fact that we should not shy away from difficult conversations. And we should have these adult, honest conversations with people. And that's not just because of the good of for the organization, but more so for the good of the individual. It's only when you give people feedback, you give them an opportunity to improve. And as the cliche goes, that it's one of the best gifts that you can receive is of feedback.
Yeah,
However, I think in the COVID context, it obviously gets trickier. And how and when one manages these conversations needs to be obviously timed and done in the right fashion. I
absolutely.
also feel not all conversations really would mean end of career. Sometimes they're also just developmental conversations, and the fact that we don't have them at all could be postponing or delaying an eventuality which may not be, like I said, good for the individual or the organization. I think the general rule to follow is whenever we have these conversations, we need to have the intent very clear in our mind. Yeah. And if you ask me, if there is just one single minded intent, which is how do I use this conversation from the purpose of growth for the individual, then everything that kind of falls on your ear or the recipient's ear is taken from a very, very different lens. So keep the growth for the individual as the intent, and not the individual per se. Because it's not the individual you're criticizing, you're actually helping them come up with avenues for growth. And that's when the whole meaning becomes very, very different. So if growth is the intent, then I would always say that business leaders can still have these conversations, but they need to keep in mind first thing is the compassion element. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they say in giving feedback there are two things which are very, very important. One is compassion, and the other is that feedback should be direct. So in these times, one needs to specifically dial up the compassion element. And if you're giving feedback, make sure it is not coming out of any bias. It is coming out from the goodness of your heart. When you give this feedback, you are making it as demonstrable and easy for the person to understand. And as they say, that compassion is one step ahead of empathy, which means that you go into the other person's shoes, so you are much more empathetic when you're giving that feedback. I think the other thing, when we talk about feedback, if it's compassionate, it also has to be direct, in the sense that we usually go around circles in terms of what we are trying to say.
Yeah.
So if we can make it more direct, make it more impactful, leave it with an action, make it more measurable, make it more specific, offer them help at the end of it. And there is this element called the difference that you can make through tiny steps. So even if you outline couple of very basic tiny actions that this person can do, trust me, you leave the person in a much, much better situation. My other advice to anyone giving this feedback, if they've kept compassion, care, and direct feedback at the core of the conversation, is to also focus on providing that psychological safety that that individual needs. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anytime you land difficult information or difficult feedback to someone, our jobs as line managers, our jobs as someone giving that feedback, is to give them the full comfort that it is okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've made
Yeah.
a mistake, it is okay. If you have experimented, it is okay. And there is an element of trust which gives the person this comfort that, okay, this feedback is for my good. And I have the psychological safety to go ahead, play openly, play ahead with my full intent and good spirit, and to make things turn around for me. So I think those would be some kind of tips to give. So don't shy away from giving feedback. Choose the right moment. Make empathy the key kind of driver in these conversations, and help them with actions rather than just stating problems. And psychological safety, which completes the package.
Fantastic, fantastic, Fatma. That was a very comprehensive overview, and I'm definitely people that will be viewing this interview. I'm sure that they will find this very useful. And that brings me to my next question also, because you were talking about psychological safety and all of that, and how important it is to give the other person that psychological safety. So with respect to mental health, you know, a lot of us are investing that time into our overall mental health. And if do you have any advice for people that are constantly trying to navigate different aspects of their mental health? And you know, how can we kind of stay sane? A lot of us are still working from home. I mean, if I'm talking about myself, there's so many things that I've had to juggle for the past, you know, couple of months. Like, it's literally driving me insane. And there's a lot of different aspects that, I mean, I don't even know where my day goes, right? So do you have any tips and tricks for those of
True.
us that are constantly trying to balance our mental health?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, I would say it's okay not to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think these are very normal circumstances.
absolutely.
So if someone is really, things are taking a toll on them and they're feeling a bit down about something, it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to kind of talk to people about it. And we can always choose who are the people that we need to kind of talk to get that comfort. Yeah. In our organization, for example, we do have professional help. So we have an employee assistance program, which is a toll-free number that you can dial into, and you have psychologists available who help you navigate. And especially today, they've got psychologists who actually help you navigate through COVID challenges, and they're trained in that. That is one place where a lot of organizations today are providing support. But suppose that help is not available, and you just have to kind of dial up the support structure that you have around you. Always good to kind of find someone who you can speak to and express yourself more openly. I think many a times it is because of there are too many things to prioritize, be it homework, be it housework, be it office work, which we are all trying to struggle with, and then also the challenges of the gloom and doom that is around us. And it is good to talk to people about it. So in office today, we are encouraging people that please talk to your line managers, share what your challenges are. We're doing well-being quotient surveys to find out which part of the well-being is not being managed properly, so that you can identify the problem. We give them very simple coping strategies in terms of how to deal with it. And most importantly, again, have those honest
Yeah,
conversations with your line. Is there any work that you can deprioritize? Everything is not very important today.
yeah,
Everything does not have to be at the button. So have those honest conversations with your line in terms of where to manage these challenges. And everyone is very it is in a very different phase right now. People are far more helpful. People are far more listening to what the challenges are. So line managers, HR, etc., will help you with seeing how your work can take away a lot of challenge that may be there. Also, companies are being very open in terms of giving flexibility, in terms of downtime, in terms of taking leaves at this point in time. And I don't know why we are not taking leaves. We should be taking leaves, because nobody can go on vacation. So we might as well use our
yeah.
leaves for managing our own mental well-being. And one more thing, which, because everything is shut around us, so there's a lot of disruption in the normal things that we do. Find your own rhythm. People have found new hobbies. People have found new ways to keep themselves engaged and happy. People have found new meanings. People are going back to, making contact with old school friends. Zoom is doing fantastic business because of all the calls.
Absolutely.
So my only advice, find your own rhythm. Be grateful for what we have. There is a lot of sense of gratitude that should be there. Find some avenue which will help you dial down. I do yoga, and I think that's a great way to create mental peace. Speak to people, be honest about your situations. There is always a friend in the office. There's always a friend in the family. Really don't keep it buckled up in yourself. So it's okay not to be okay. That's where I started off with. But I think with open sharing, it's a issue that we are finding world over. And I think we're very lucky in Pakistan that we have very extensive family and support systems to help us out, which many people in the outside world don't.
Yeah, for sure. And Fatma, while we're on the subject of flexibility and how the organization is obviously, in your case, especially, your organization is giving those flexible arrangements to everybody. So just in light of, the changing business dynamics, how do you feel that the HR policies and procedures overall have kind of shifted? Globally, as well as, if you could give a global as well as a local context, it'll really help us.
Yeah, so I think that's a very pertinent question and something which everyone is asking, that in line of the trends which are emerging, what are going to be some of the new ways of working. Some people call it next normal, some people call it future normal, some call it new normal, etc., whatever you want to call it. So I think there's a lot of thought that is going on to that. And very recently we had a whole session, because within Unilever, we are talking extensively about, reimagining things for the future. And when we talk about reimagine, we are talking about reimagined work, reimagined workforce, and reimagined workplace. And where is this thought really originating from is how do we see, the future talent, coming up? Is talent going to be more centered around headquarter, or talent can be anywhere and everywhere? How the whole spike in digital is happening, and how it is going to become imperative for us to adopt digital faster, because its adoption has clearly moved one generation up, right? How would future work models be? Is everyone going to work from home? Is there going to be a hybrid work model that we're talking about? And then, of course, in the middle of all of this, there is a lot of cost consciousness that is coming into organizations. There is a lot of thought about, when the grounds are shifting, you need to act with speed, agility, and resilience. But when people talk about hybrid models, they're also talking about what impact would that have on productivity? What impact would that have on culture? So I think all organizations are at a very, very early stage of really doing this future gazing and seeing how is it going to really play up for us. But safely speaking, I can tell you that from an HR lens, we are going to look at a lot more flexibility in terms of where people are working from, how people are working, where are we sourcing talent. Do they really need to come to office every day? Is there a high reliance on gig economy? Are partnerships going to be a bigger way of the future than only relying on your core kind of systems? Because these are really going to be the levelers when we talk about reimagining work. Also, I think when we talk about any kind of change in terms of the talent that we need, there is going to be a huge definition in terms of what are we going to look for in the future leaders. Decision-making speed is going to be a lot faster. We talked about psychological safety that needs to be heightened. We're talking about prioritization needs to be faster. We're talking about more compassion. We're talking about more agility in operation. So I think everything and anything that we're doing in HR is going to be how do we fast track all these things and make them part of our reimagined world. So very early days, there's a bit of thought that's going around in terms of org structures. There's a bit of thought that's going around how do we bring in talent? How do we provide them that flexibility? Especially if, not everyone now is looking at coming back to work.
Yeah, true, absolutely. And Fatma, it's interesting that you're talking about the skill set that leaders would need at this point in time. So what is, I mean, with regards to the skill set that is required by graduates now, because there was a lot of unrest initially when this whole COVID-19 situation broke out. Here, what is going to happen? What are the new skill sets that we need to acquire? What are some of the skills that are going to become redundant? Maybe we don't even need some of the skills that we've been kind of focusing on for so long. So, in your opinion, what are some of the skills that new graduates or perhaps the newer talent needs to focus on? And what are some of the skills that you feel are now going to become redundant as we enter into the new norm?
So I think, Aisha, before I answer the question on skills, I just want to kind of share something with you, because you've talked about, management trainees and the recent recruitments that we've done. That when COVID basically came in, we were all thrown in the midst of how do we go ahead and hire our batch this year? And thankfully, we came up with a whole digital solution right from the first stage to the last stage of the CE interview,
Amazing.
to make sure we ran the program digitally. Yeah, absolutely. So we ran our digital, our development centers, our assessment centers, everything through an online platform, and it got us to be challenged in a different way because we had never done it before. Prior to that, the screening of our interviews, etc., used to happen through technology, and that just showed to us that nothing should stop as a result of us gone virtual.
Yeah.
The consideration which went to our mind was that I think it's not fair on the students who worked and studied so hard to be deprived of the next life of their next chapter of their life just because COVID is there. And we did the whole program completely digitally, which brings me to the point that I think it's a no-brainer that in terms of any skill that one has to develop, be it for not only the fresh hires that we do, but even for the people who are working in the organization, even someone like myself, digital upskilling is one of the core priorities or core skills that Unilever now looks at having in individuals. Yeah, and it's basically coming around through the opportunity, which is there, and I think COVID has just fast tracked it. So if you look at e-com prior to COVID, we used to order online, etc., but all that has kind of accelerated leaps and bounds. As an organization, we were using digital media, to do a lot of our brand promotions, etc., but that's now even fast tracked a lot more. Even consumer insights are now coming purely through the digital end. So, as an FMCG, as an early adopter of all of technology, I think that would be number one skill in our organization. And the good thing is that we are not just leaving our people there saying learn the skill yourself, but we've got very comprehensive programs where we are upskilling, reskilling our people on the digital front. And like I said, that's one of the core priorities. I think anything which is going to become redundant in terms of a skill is something which the machine can do better than the individual. And that's why we are encouraging people and people at every stage of their life to make sure that we make learning our new friend, and upskill ourselves in those areas which are really going to help us for the future.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the most commonly asked questions, I think, wherever we go. I mean, these, poor souls. I remember there was this one time when they were so worried कि what is going to happen, नौकरियां मिलेंगी नहीं मिलेंगी क्या होगा. So I think this should really help them out also. And I think slowly and gradually this is improving. I think there's a lot of organizations that have taken inspiration from Unilever also and are doing this on their own on a digital scale. So I think that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, Fatma, this brings me to my last question, and this is more of a personal question. Okay, it could be a little outdated also, but obviously,
Okay.
so I'm a mom, right? And obviously, there's a lot that this whole COVID situation has taught me also. I mean, I've been used to multitasking, but with COVID, I don't know, I feel like I have five heads or something, and it's insane, right? So just you're a mom, okay, and you've been through that whole journey where you didn't really take off from work and all of that, and you're also, mashallah, say you've had this fantastic career that has spanned over 20 years and all of that. So what I just want to learn from you is, how do you do it? first of all? And second of all, what is your stance on work-life integration? Because it's a buzzword, it's a concept that has, I mean, of course, people knew about this concept, but it's something that's recently taken a lot of importance in our lives. So, I mean, what would your advice be to moms such as myself who want to have a career and who want to, be there at home also? And how can work-life integration kind of help us in that respect?
Yeah, so I think again, very, very pertinent question. And Pele, we used to talk about work-life balance. Now
Yeah,
we talk about life blends. Yeah, how do
absolutely.
you kind of blend the two? And interestingly, in COVID, again, everyone has kind of set their own habits. I think men are doing equally enough work in the house nowadays as a lot of women are doing. So jobs are getting a bit reprioritized again because of COVID
True.
between the household also, because of what we've seen. And, I think there's been a newfound respect for what we do as women. I can say so for my own house, when my husband and my children see me, doing a full day job and then yet doing the cooking and doing the cleaning because, domestic help is hard to get. I think there has been a lot of newfound appreciation of the work that we do as working women, and now as running households as well. What sometimes freaks me out a bit is if God forbid COVID kind of continues to deepen, will we lose out on more working women? Because people will throw in the towel and they'll say we are just not able to kind of balance
Yeah,
the two. And how do we do it? And I think as a country, as an economy, we can't afford for women to drop out of the work race.
absolutely.
On us as employers, there's a huge responsibility on how we make sure that even post or easement on COVID, we continue to make sure that our policies remain so flexible that we don't lose out the gender diversity that we really want to bring into our workplace. And Unilever is a huge proponent of that. So you can imagine, even today when we work on our easement policy, we are looking at how do we kind of give relief to mothers who have children who are doing their schooling still out of home and not call them into the workplace, or mothers who are using our daycare and we can't open up our daycare. So how do we give them the relief and not bring them back to work? Or mothers who are caregivers at home to vulnerable parents, how do we make sure we don't bring them back to work? So I think a huge amount of I should say responsibility on the employers to make sure that we continue, giving as much as flexibility as we can to manage this work-life blends, which will make it a beautiful recipe for working women. You asked about my own experience, so I'm a bit ancient. And I started working in the days when there was nothing known as daycare. And interestingly, both the times when I had my kids, I was doing sales roles. So it was always difficult. And in those days, yeah, maternity leave used to be only 8 weeks. Now we've got 6 months, right?
Yeah,
And used to be always a challenge to go back to work after 8 weeks, especially both my kids, used to sleep in the day and stay up at nights. I think what kind of holds you in there is the fact that you always need a support system. I've been super lucky that through my husband, through my mother-in-law, my help, I've been able to kind of always have that support system. And I think that's the number one advice which I would give to people, that make sure you have your own support structure,
yeah, absolutely.
and that it's reliable enough, to make things work. I think the other thing is that challenges will always come our way. We should not throw in the towel very quickly. And I
Hmm.
think that's the other advice that I always give. Now that there is more flexibility at work, there is a lot more support that is available. Don't throw in the towel. This is the time that you get a bit challenged, especially when you have your first kid and then you have your second kid,
Yeah,
and how do you manage? And I've seen that with me working, my kids are even more responsible, than they would be had I probably been around. So it's always about teaching
hmm.
them more, making them more self-sufficient, reaching out to your support system whenever you need help, which has helped me going. I've been also very lucky to have very good line managers who have always been supportive. And I think we should not try to play the man if we can't do anything, but we should ask for that help wherever required. Yeah, and I think we become amazing jugglers of doing so many things in life. So I think we are fantastic at multitasking. We plan much better, and I think those are a couple of things which have just helped me throughout. But I think I've been, mashallah, very very lucky in my journey that I've had lot of people who have played a very significant part, I think, in that journey, in the form of line managers, in terms of my family. And my only advice to people is reach out to that support structure.
Yeah.
Don't throw in the towel too early. Organizations are also more flexible. We need more working women. Double income households allow you to do a lot more for your children. And if we feel that our children are losing out on their development because of us working, it's actually just the contrary. And I think I'll just end with something that my daughter told me, which gave me a lot more support. She was in grade 5, and I remember in school, she had a debating competition, right? And she had to choose whether mothers should work or mothers should not work. And when she came home and told me, so I said, "Ha, Sasha, you must have chosen that mothers should not work." And she was in grade 5, and she told me, "No, actually, I chose that mothers should work." And I asked her, so what did you kind of say in your defense? And she says, I think my mothers should work because what mothers learn, we learn. What mothers do, we do. Yeah. And because sometimes when you're not around, it makes me do things more than what I would be doing otherwise. And this is really how she put it in her own language. And if you really look at it, that's what it does. Yeah. It makes our kids more reliant. It makes our kids, if we are learning, we're constantly teaching our kids more. And hence, I think there's a beauty in the price.
Oh, wow. I think Sasha needs to spend some time with my 4-year-old also, just so so that she grows up with the same mindset, because that's what I am constantly trying to tell myself, that you know what, one day this will all pay off. So that's for sure.
It will. It will.
Fatma, thank you so much for joining me. I know that you have a super busy schedule all the time, and for you to give me this time out was fantastic. I've had a wonderful time interacting with you after so long, and I'm sure everybody that's going to watch this video is going to hopefully get a lot out of it. So thank you very, very much, and inshallah, I will touch base with you soon, inshallah. Take care.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you for
Take
having
care.
me. Thank
Not at all.
you.
Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz.